one. And welcome back to episode number 44. I got it right last week, Ben. No hesitation at all.
Oh, I'm proud of you. I'm
Usually
proud
I
of you.
suck with what episode we're on.
Yeah.
Episode number 44. We got a jam-packed schedule, but here tonight we got Zach, who's back for his second ever Raise the Banner episode. We got Benny Ballgame here as usual. And tonight we got special guest Ed Han. He's from Pod by the River podcast, Red Sox podcast that you can listen to. And he does a lot of work for Sox prospects who, if you're a Red Sox fan, you kind of use that as your go-to kind of feeling of trying to understand the Red Sox farm system. You don't generally, most fan bases don't have that type of I would say in-depth scouting and details, but fortunately we do as Red Sox fans.
Oh yeah, no one else has Sox prospects. Many have tried, but they're the only ones who have.
I see a few around like the MLB. I think the Orioles have one, a couple others do, but Sox prospect. I don't even go to like outside the MLB pipeline or Baseball America when I'm trying to get like more in-depth stuff on Red Sox prospects. But hey, that's where I'm going to start us off. Obviously with the Red Sox, we got the trade deadline that came up. They made 4 trades, I think it was. We got a couple of relievers. We got Jansen, the catcher, and we also got Paxton. I guess you could call it trade, more of a DFA kind of here you go and give us nothing. I'll start with you, Ed. What are your overall thoughts on the trade deadline and how you're feeling in terms of how they address the needs?
I mean, it's kind of funny with Paxton, now that you mentioned that, just that there's a pretty sizable package that Houston had to give up to get Yusei Kikuchi from the Blue Jays, and you look at what Paxton's done this season, not that different than Kikuchi. So that was, I think that ended up being a pretty beneficial move. That was the starter they needed. But as far as what Breslow did with the deadline, he crossed off a lot of things off of the list. He got a couple relievers in Lucas Sims and Luis Garcia. One of them is kind of a middle reliever. Sims, who has good stuff, added a cutter in, but drove. I have some Reds friends, and he drove them nuts. Just not somebody whose control was especially reliable, I guess would be the way of putting it. But Garcia's a veteran who actually pitched with Andrew Bailey at one point. They were teammates, I think, with the Angels a while back.
Bailey was the pitching coach, right? I think I
don't know if he was the pitching coach or he actually pitched for them, because Bailey's not that much older than him. Bailey's like 39, 40.
Yeah,
he is 37.
I want to say it was 2019. We can pull
something like that. But those guys are fine for what they are. It isn't any. I think some people wanted like a Mason Miller or Scott from the Marlins, but it seems like the costs were pretty high, and considering that no one in the top 100 for prospects got traded this year is probably the right call not to move a Kristen Campbell for a 2-month rental or something like that. Eddie Jansen, right-handed bat, kind of an upgrade over Reese McGuire as your back. Not kind of an upgrade. He's definitely an upgrade over him. I don't know if he's the right-handed bat anybody wanted, but that guy's gone really hot in Toronto in the past. Like 17 home runs in half a season. Always has hit home runs. Somebody that hopefully will be able to take full advantage of the monster. In worst case scenario, that's a guy who's very motivated to get his payday, and someone that at the very least can call a better game and play a better defensive game than Reese McGuire. But those are the main moves. I guess unless you want to count Johan Ramirez, who was a waiver pickup. I don't. I think that was just sort of a stopgap. He's already been DFA'd. But yeah, those are the guys. I don't know. It was I at the moment that it happened, I was a little underwhelmed. Thinking about it a little bit more, I really liked the Quinn Priester trade that they made. That was the last one that isn't really for the team immediately, but they swapped Nick York, who they have. York was being squeezed on all ends. There were better second basemen behind him. There were better second basemen ahead of him. There were better second basemen on the IL right now. There just wasn't really room for him, but he's somebody that, is a good enough hitter that I would think deserves a reasonable shot at a major league gig. And he we'll probably get that with Pittsburgh. And in return, the Red Sox get something that they really don't have. They got some MLB ready depth that might not be what we see with Quinn Priester right now. Probably isn't the final product, but he's pitched in the majors. He's like, what, 22? So he's very young. He's got options, so you can work on stuff in AAA with him. I think that if Luis Peral, if he was still a prospect, Priester, I would put him as their number one pitching prospect in the system right now. Luis Perales, if he hadn't blown out his arm, would probably be that spot. But Tommy John surgery, you can't guarantee he's going to come back exactly as he was, and he's still up there. But I take
a pause on his value for the next year and a half.
Yeah, exactly. But I take Priester over Fitz. I take Priester over Wickelman Gonzalez. I take Priester over Elmer Rodriguez Cruz. I take Priester over Nick Sandlin right now. Sandlin might have the higher ceiling, but Priester's shown that he can at least get to the majors, which Sandlin's just got to AA. So it's a little while there. So I thought that was a really smart move of just swapping a strength for a weakness. York, I do like York. I don't have any issue with him whatsoever as a player, but I just don't think there was really a spot for him here. It just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, Ben, how about you? Where are you at with all this?
Similar spot. I know obviously there's some familiarity with Paxton, but I was kind of hoping for a little bit of I don't want to say a bigger name necessarily, but I was kind of hoping for more starting pitching help. Jansen, not really the right-handed bat you're looking for, although he does have an RBI tonight to tie up the ball game, I think, earlier. But certainly, as Ed mentioned, he's a significant upgrade over Reese McGuire, who immediately was DFA'd. One thing I was certainly pleasantly surprised, there was certainly some rumors that they were going to kind of take the Chaim Bloom approach and kind of like add here, subtract there. They were going to kind of ride the fence, but I didn't feel like they did that. I feel like they either added depth for now and help for later, but they didn't subtract anything that detracts from what hopefully will be a playoff push over the next 2 months, which I thought was nice to see. They didn't give up anything really of value. I think Matthew Lugo is arguably the most notable prospect that got moved, and he was moved in the Luis Garcia trade. I do like what they did in the back end of the bullpen. I'm pretty sure if I recognized him right, I think Lucas Sims is coming to the game right now because Bayo just got pulled. So they've certainly done more. I was satisfied, but I certainly wasn't wowed by the deadline moves. There were no big names to get. A lot of guys were going for high prices that I'm glad they didn't pay. But there really wasn't anybody on the market that was like, gotta go get that guy. There was the rumor that, the Tigers might have moved Skubal, that the White Sox may have moved Crochet, which I didn't really see why. Like young team that isn't going to win. Like, why are they going to trade their best pitchers with years of control?
Completely failed at the deadline.
They were involved in kind of a weird trade, the 3-way deal with the Dodgers, where they ended up giving up Michael Kopech. Why I don't know. But I would say positive, but again, kind of, underwhelming, like no big wow move. But again, like there wasn't a wow player to go out and get this year that was a immediate impact, but also future help. Like, sure, could they probably have gotten Skubal? Yeah. But would we have been sitting here today being like, hey, like, did we really want to give up? Because I'm guessing it would have cost at least one of the top 3 guys between Teal, Mayer, and Anthony. And then, Matt, I saw you post on X with the eyeballs when it was announced that Roman Anthony was scratched from his start an hour before the deadline was going to come up. And, of course, it turned out it wasn't.
Was it Morosi or whatever that put that out there? And scared the entire fan base for about 30 seconds. Yeah,
you went into just complete panic mode. So, we probably would have been sitting here like, do we really want to give up somebody, like Skubal's got 3 more years of control. He's only 27. He's an ace. But it's like, my big thing, this is kind of loosely connected to this, is that if they're not going to trade their prospects, but they're also not going to spend, like, that's the part that I kind of like take a little bit of an issue with, is at this point, it's like, well, you're not going to trade your top 3, and then Campbell's obviously making a push to be like, make it a top 4. If you're not going to move those guys, but then you're not going to go, and I'm not saying they needed to go shell $200 million and go sign Corbin Burns, but if you're not going to make that kind of a move or trade your prospects, it kind of makes these deadline moves a little bit underwhelming because you don't really expect them to do it anyway. So you're almost not disappointed, but not shocked either.
I think that there's more pragmatism in trading those prospects also than people realize, and it is a little more of a Chaim Bloom type move because the domestic roster reserve list has changed. You can only hold on to 175 guys in your system now. It used to be a lot more than that. So these are guys you have to make space after a draft. They cut a few guys, but it's probably better to trade some of these guys that don't have an immediate route to the majors. Like somebody like Lugo, who was he going to play over here? And nobody. You had to put him on the 40 man, or you lose him in the Rule 5 draft. Same thing with Nico Kavadas. Who was he going to play over? They didn't want to give him a shot earlier. They brought in Garrett Cooper and Dom Smith instead of that. So if you're a guy without a role, you might as well try to get some value out of them. And I consider that's a successful use of the player. If you're using them and sending them to a team that gets a better pick out of it, you get a better player out of, that's a good use of it. That's a successful draft pick. They got Nico Kavadas in the 11th round, and they were able to turn him into a decent back-end rental relief pitcher in Luis Garcia. So yeah, there were moves to be made with that. And even somebody like Ovis Portes, who I saw some people bitching about. Can I say bitching about on
yes.
this? Okay. Yeah, I saw some people bitching about, he's a talented 19-year-old pitcher. And it's like, yeah, next year he'll be a talented 20-year-old pitcher. Like, no.
And we won't, guys, and we won't know if he's talented for another 6 years because he'll be 25 before he sees any legitimate big league time.
Unless he's really good. And then he gets up at like a 23-year-old. If he's somebody because this is a kid, that's the thing. He's a kid with a 98-mile-an-hour fastball and what's been said to be a fairly unhittable slider. Cool. 19, arm surgery, likely a thing. Like the human body wasn't meant to throw like that, is how I always look at this stuff. So I see these guys as lottery tickets. Aldo Ramirez, the guy they traded for Kyle Schwarber, hasn't done anything. And that's not a knock. Like I don't have any beef with these guys, but it's a risk that you take with pitching. In general, just young, hard throwing pitching,
and young, hard throwing pitchers they're also so volatile too.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, relievers are in general. So like a guy like Ryan Zeferjan, who they traded, also another guy on the 40-man roster who probably will be a decent big league reliever, or at least will get a shot. I think I'll be shocked if the three of these guys are into the majors by the end of September, just with the way the Angels operate. But it's you just don't know. Pitching is so hard to predict. It's all a coin flip, and it's funny though because Lugo and Zeferjan, those were both Dombrowski guys. They've been in the system for a while.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Lugo had a really good 2022. Then he had a pretty subpar 2023.
Yeah.
And then he bounced back this this year and
they moved him to the outfield. He's a full-time. He was a shortstop back then, and he wasn't that good at it. But he can play left and right fine.
Where are you on all this, Zach?
Fine, kind of the third person in a row to say it. Like I think I'm going to team with Benny and Ed here. Like if they were, leading the AL East or at least leading the wild card, and they made these moves, I feel better about the team because they actually just plug some holes that needed to be filled. They're an overachieving team. This team isn't going to go very deep, right? So they're kind of just making moves, what feels like, to appease the fan base who was so desperate for moves in general. I think the best one that I'm probably the most excited for now that I've had time to think about it, I mean, I think I bitched about it on Twitter, but is the Nick York for Quinn Priester trade. I thought you could have, at the time, gotten more for Nick York just based on the hype. And again, what I was going to say is Sox fans and Celtics fans have this unique ability to overvalue everybody in the system. Everyone is untradeable, and somehow you want the team to get better. So I'm of the mind to just trade away your prospects, trade away your bench players to get major league help or NBA talent help in the NBA. So underwhelmed, but happy to see something come along. I thought they could have, to Ben's point, gotten a better bat than just Danny Jensen, but you kind of filled two holes, or maybe filled half of a hole with each move, right? Getting a better right-handed bat and getting a better defensive catcher than Reese McGuire. Fine. Getting James Paxton, I talked about it on the last podcast, but fine move, not really a sexy move, but needed a lefty in the rotation, familiar with the system and the stadium here. Nothing wowed me. We'll see what Priester does next year. I think he's due to come up maybe next year, maybe end of this year, who knows. But yeah, overall fine. Nothing like.
Yeah, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of reviewing everything. Just a few notes. I basically agree with most of you guys. The Priester thing interested me. As we talked about, they obviously didn't have clear room for him. They have a surplus of middle infielders. I've always been a Nick York fan, but I have also always been truthful with myself in saying I think he could be a solid major leaguer. I don't know if he can ever be like an all-star player. And so if they get the opportunity to trade it for a guy like Priester, who the amount of times I heard the word project about him after the trade, I wanted to just like blow up on Twitter. I was like, this guy is 23 years old. I was like, most players don't make their debut until they're like 23, 24, 25 years old. And so I was like, he's younger than every pitcher on the major league roster, I believe. And I'm pretty sure he's younger than like, I think everyone except for one pitcher on the AAA roster. So it's like, okay, yeah, he came up to the major leagues. He got knocked around a little bit. It wasn't terrible, but he got knocked around a bit. But again, like he's not a project. He's just a guy that's still developing. He still has time to grow as a player. And so, like we've talked about, they have the surplus. You could probably hear the dogs barking in the background.
I mean, is Nick York a project? This guy was taken in the first round the year before Nick York. Like, he's a year younger than Nick York. They're prospects. They're just because you've been to the majors doesn't. Yeah.
And so people just saw that he came into the majors last year and just being the unobjective Red Sox fan that everybody is on Twitter. We saw Nick York traded for Quinn Priester. Okay, Google Quinn Priester stats. Oh, he has a 6 ERA. He sucks. He's a project. He's not good. It was a terrible trade. When in reality, if you actually kind of take the moment to look at things, you realize that he is still only 23. He has some good stuff. And quite honestly, I trust Breslow and Bailey in identifying these guys, especially obviously in the pitching staff. And, we'll see if it pans out. But like at the moment, I don't know how you can look at that trade and say, oh, that's a bad trade. You don't have to love it and say it's like a steal, but I just don't understand how people can bitch. Well, I do, because people are miserable, but
it's a trade that makes sense. It's not that's the thing with some trades. You're not gonna know. When people say like, we'll rate the trade deadline, you can't right now. You can't, because I remember when they traded for Kyle Schwarber, people were pissed. And the way that you really have to do it, at least the way that I look at it, is did they make the playoffs? Were they successful? That's how you tell. It's really that simple.
Yeah. And the one other topic I wanted to just brush on is you kind of mentioned it. They had a bunch of Rule 5 guys that they were going to have to add, in York and Lugo, and I think Cavadas as well. Was Zephyrin have to be? Was he?
Oh yeah. He could have gone last year. Actually, I was a little surprised that he didn't.
They had guys that they were going to have to add. They unloaded them, and as you said, like I posted about it at like noon yesterday. I said like I would really like them to unload some of these AAA guys that you can kind of tell that they don't really exactly have that real major league upside. Let's send them out. We need to clear out some way for some of these AA guys, and that's exactly what happened. So now we have 5 open spots on the AAA roster. We're going to see Mayer up there. We're going to see Tail up there. You're probably going to see Dobbins, maybe Anthony, maybe Campbell before the year ends. But they have room now to add these guys and give them, the 2 months in AAA that they really didn't exactly have the room for prior to this move. So, and to Ben's point, like there's a balance at the deadline of we recognize that this team is good, not great, and we recognize that the long-term future looks really good. And Cora said that some of the talks for Relievo, which I imagine was what's his face with Miami, Scott, that they talked about Anthony and Mayer in a deal. And it's like, I would never in a million years give up either of those guys for a rental reliever, no matter how good he is. Like that's not happening. So, I think they did a good job balancing things and where they added and improved this team without Ben, like you said, like really sacrificing the farm system in any way. I don't think we look at the farm system now and say like they drop down a tier in terms of quality of a farm system. So as a whole, I'm relatively happy with how things played out. It could have been a little bit better, but like, they added and they didn't subtract at all. And so like, they're a better team, and we'll see how things play out. In the end, we went into the season with a long-term outlook. We're a little bit ahead of where we kind of hoped for, which is nice. So let's not get greedy and kind of start getting angry about not being a World Series contender this year. So
the farm is still good, which is what everyone, at least on Twitter, is happy about, right? The farm system, at least to me, is meant to supplement your roster. If you're going to build out your entire roster on prospects, the Orioles are doing it now, so maybe fine. But like this offseason is going to be the time where it's like last offseason, I think I've been saying this for 5 years, but like last offseason, we thought Chaim Bloom was going to go spend and kind of, supplement what he's been doing. Now this season, I would like to see, you're bringing up Meyer and Teal and Anthony, and maybe even, as you said, Campbell, some of these pitchers here as well. Go out and fill some of those, spots with.
You have that luxury to do so. When you have, and I've always said like the path to sustain success in the major leagues is a good farm system. If you can have a continuous pipeline, and you don't need superstars every single year, but if you can have a continuous pipeline and you're a team that can also spend money, that's how you end up having a great team year in and year out, because you got the cheap prospects that don't cost shit, and you can spend money on a handful of big name guys and go get them. We're seeing with the Dodgers.
Yeah. Dodgers and the Braves are a perfect example.
Yeah, their owner went over the top in LA, but we've seen it for the last handful of years where they've made splashes in free agency, and they can do that because they had the luxury of having, 5 to 7 good, young, cheap prospects that have come through the system.
And I'm not saying get rid of, every single prospect in your system and deplete the farm system the way that Dombrowski did. I just would like some spending, right? I mean, Henry.
Yeah, they got to spend more. Like that. I mean, we want them to spend more. I said in last offseason that, the idea that came out that Henry was like, I want to wait until these guys are ready. And my answer was, if you truly believe in them, you can spend now knowing that they're going to be here and they'll be cheap.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm not going to believe it until I see it now because of that. But if they're here, supplement them well. And this team could realistically be a very, very, very good baseball team in the coming years. So it's just, kind of staying patient, I guess. Is the best way to put it. But
Boston has to be patient. It's not going to.
Yeah, I do want to just transition more so of the recent kind of play and kind of what your expectations are the rest of the way. Ed, I'll start with you. How are you feeling like post All-Star break? Are you panicking a little bit with kind of the play that we've seen, or are you just still kind of optimistic of how things will play out?
Neither optimistic or pessimistic. Did anybody actually expect what they were doing prior to the deadline to last? No. It was nice to see, but we kind of, especially with young teams like this, it's hard to keep up that effort going into the dog days of summer. So I'm not surprised to see that they went into a swoon. The bullpen's exhausted. Worst possible 2 people to get hurt. Their 2 setup man went down at the worst possible time. So it happens. And they had a lot of series where they just had a ton of good luck in those clutch moments. And that happens, and you'll get the opposite. A lot of the thing that I guess has been more of a positive for me is that they have been able to at least stay in the games. Like, they've been close games. I don't see a lack of effort. I don't see a lack of ability or anything. Sometimes it just doesn't go your way, and sometimes it doesn't go your way a lot. I think the talent level of this team is probably an 85 to 90 win team at best, and at worst, it's like a 75 to 70 win team. I think they'll probably finish above that. Maybe they end up at 78 wins again. Maybe they're the Chris Davises of baseball teams. I think more likely they end up around an 83 to 86 win team, but we'll see. Hopefully we don't have a collapse like last September. That was brutal. But
yeah,
that was a team that just lost all of they just lost all of their fight. It was done.
They were 1 game out at the deadline last year, and they had like they were afloat for like a week, and then they had a really miserable couple series, and they dropped like to 4 or 5 games out, and they went off the train, off the rails.
Yeah, so I mean,
hard.
my expectations are maybe they get a playoff spot, maybe they won't. They haven't really changed. It was really fun when they were winning all the time, and like you start to get a little cocky, and you're like, oh, let's get greedy, let's take the whole division, and it's like, well, I don't know. Have you seen the Orioles? Like, they're pretty good. Do you think the Yankees are going to play like this all season? Probably not. So then you focus on, and this probably had to do with a little bit of the strategy also. Like, okay, what can we win? Like wild card. So let's see if we can get to the wild card, and then you're in the dance. Anything can happen, and that's what I mean. I'd love for them to get a 3 or a 2 seed. I'm not that impressed by Kansas City or Bobby Witt maybe, but not the Twins. So I think that one of those spots is up for grabs, and they can still certainly get it, especially with Cassis and the relievers coming back. But we'll see. It's really that simple. We'll see.
Yeah. How about you, Ben?
So I would say the top thing on my watch list for the second half, the rest of the way, is Tanner Houck. And I bring that up because so he threw on Sunday, not well, and I may not have the number exact, but I believe after his start on Sunday, he got up. He's now at 20 innings more this year now than he's ever thrown in a single season in his big league career. So there's 2 things to watch, right? August 1st is tomorrow. So he's got, 3-4 starts left before September 1st. So if the Red Sox are still in it and he's showing signs of decline, you can't really shut him down. Because you brought in Paxton. Unless you expect anything from Priester, which would be nothing short of a miracle to be some kind of a starter you can count on the rest of the way. You can't shut Houck down for the month of September if they're in contention for a wild card spot. So he's definitely high on the watch list for me, just to see how he responds. And then, couple things. Obviously, Pivetta and Bayo have been riding the roller coaster all year. Pivetta's had stretches where he's looked as dominant as he's ever been, or, he goes out and he gives up 8 runs in an inning. So the starting pitching, that was my biggest thing in the early part of the year is, I was pretty down on them when Lucas Giolito went down. Not that I thought he was going to be a huge difference maker, but given that they didn't really address starting pitching in the offseason, I was pretty down on the roster. Obviously, Andrew Bailey and Craig Breslow's pitching philosophy has done wonders with this entire staff to get us to where we are at this point. But Bayo, Pivetta riding the roller coaster, hopefully you can see more peaks than you do valleys the rest of the season. And then, Casas is that kind of, and I hate to use this phrase because I butchered Chaim Bloom for 4 years. I hate the whole we're getting Casas without giving up anything. Well, it's yeah, but that feels like a cop-out. However, he's an infusion of power, good plate discipline, great on base in the middle of your lineup. Hopefully in the next week, because didn't he go to AAA on a rehab a couple days ago? So hopefully you see him in the next 7 to 10 days at most. Hopefully he doesn't have any setbacks.
Yes, Casas started there yesterday. He got a DDH there. Drew a walk, struck out a couple times. I got to go there and got to talk to him a little bit before the game, and he's still in a little bit of pain, but it's manageable for him now. He's definitely not fully healed yet. It's going to be a process for him coming back, but he's at a point where he can do it. He's at a point where he can play again.
Yeah. So maybe, obviously you've got depth guys that can play first, and, maybe you ease him in, you rotate him through DH every once in a while, you keep the wear and tear of his body to a minimum, but you're going to need him down the stretch. I mean, obviously he's better defensively than anybody else you're going to put at first base on this roster. But I think, they did pretty well at the deadline to help out with the back end of the bullpen. Lucas Sims got out of I don't know if you guys were watching the game. He got out of a bases loaded 1-out jam that Bayo put him in. First pitch pop out, and then he got a ground out to Devers. Playing with a little bit of fire. They got runner at second and 1 out, although they just flew out to Duran in center, or Rafael on center. So hopefully the pitching staff can kind of settle in a little bit. The bullpen was never a concern for me, and obviously adding in Garcia and Sims, although Sims, his walk rate's too high for my personal taste. Hopefully they can straighten things out and, get some stability moving forward. But a lot of these guys are approaching or have already exceeded innings on the mound, innings, in the box, defensively in the field, to see like how are they going to hold up the rest of the season. So, fingers crossed. I think, the last 2 years, the Phillies and D-backs have proven that if you can just get in and get hot, anything can happen. So if they can be one of those teams and make a run, great. It's icing on the cake. But hopefully they can sustain and, you don't suffer any massive injuries the rest of the way.
Yeah. Zach, where are you at? How you feeling?
Yeah, one thing I want to keep an eye on is the fight that this team has, right? You kind of alluded to it before, but like last year they were very vocal about go out and get, whatever we needed. And it was pitching, it was laundry list of things. Devers was vocal, Jansen was vocal. Well, this year they went out and got those things, right? So they're in it, they're a game out, or maybe a bit less now or a bit more now. So can they keep up the fight that they've had to get to this point, right? They're overachieving. Can they keep that up? And also, can they bounce back from this tough stretch that they've had since the All-Star break is one thing that I want to look at too, right? They've obviously been very good, and they played ahead a lot. Well, now they're 3-9, I think, since core was extended, or 3-7 since the All-Star break, whatever it is.
That's what it is. They're protesting that they don't like that he got extended. So
yeah, they hate Cora.
They're 3-7.
love him.
Yeah, 3-7 in the last 10, and they're 2.5 out, 2.5 behind Kansas City for the last wild card.
Yeah. So one thing I want to know is can they bounce back from this? Right? They've blown leads. I was at the game on Friday when they came back against the Yankees. That was a great game, and then they blew it again the next night. That's obviously not what you want to see. And then the debacle that was the fifth inning last night. Can we bounce back and kind of clean this up going forward and catch Minnesota? Can we catch maybe Kansas City? That's what I want to keep up because we complained about it last year. The team went out and got players at the deadline this year. Now it's time to actually go out and perform.
Yeah, it's obviously a good thought, and we'll see if it kind of plays out. It really, for me, comes down to, obviously the pitching staff. We saw the addition of Sims and Garcia, and they should add stability to the bullpen for the next week or so until hopefully. Is Martin on his rehab yet?
Hope.
Not yet. He's going to be starting soon. He's throwing bullpens. I think Slayton's a little bit behind him.
Yeah,
and
so I think
Hendricks is throwing bullpens too, Liam Hendricks. But who knows when
Martin
he comes back.
Martin should be back within, I would say, 2 weeks. Okay. And then Slayton could be back in 2 to 3 weeks. And then Hendricks, maybe a month. So maybe early September, I think you could see him. And so if they're in the position where they're competitive and they're within reach of the wild card or hold one of the spots, they could have a lockdown bullpen for the last month of the season. Will it matter at that point? We don't know, but I just want to see them, as you said, fight, and I'm not worried about the lineup. I know they didn't add a right-handed bat, but I was saying it online, if they could have found a right-handed bat that fit what they were looking for, maybe a corner infielder guy that could hit lefties well, I was for it. But, we're seeing Yoshida come to life here in the second half. If he can continue this and Casas comes back, this lineup is very good. It's a very good lineup when Casas is there and Yoshida's hitting the ball well. So they should be able to compete with everybody in the AL. There's no one in the AL that genuinely scares me.
Not the Orioles?
A little bit, but
the Orioles.
Until they, and I guess it's not until the playoffs, but if you face the Orioles in the playoffs, until the Orioles do it, I'm not gonna fully buy into that they're there. They're good. Again, I'm just still, I don't know. I'm not petrified of them the way that I would be facing obviously a team like the Dodgers.
It makes sense, right? Last time we saw them be this good was last year, and they got swept in the first round. So until they do it, and
they have Corbin Burns now, though.
Well, that's the difference between 23 Baltimore and 2024 Baltimore is now they have a bona fide stud at the top of the rotation who 7 or 8 times out of 10 is going to win you game 1 of a playoff series. And then especially early on, right?
The other 3 games that they lost.
Well, they traded for Eflin. They traded for that guy.
Yeah.
No, they're better.
They boosted themselves. Grayson Rodriguez is a stud.
They're the best team in the AL. I actually threw money on them like, I don't know, 2 months ago at plus 1,000, I think, to win the World Series. So we'll see if that kind of plays out. But again, we saw the D-backs like last year get in and see what happens. So if they can go on a run and their bullpen can get back in shape and their rotation can just really hold up, I think their lineup is good enough where they could get one of the final wild card spots. And at that point, it's just kind of hope and pray that they get hot and they pitch well, and maybe their lineup's hitting very well in the playoffs and they can make a run. But I mean, overall, it's just kind of a wait and see. I think all of our expectations weren't super high and probably not this high, so we're kind of happy, I guess, with how things are, and we won't be overly disappointed if they kind of don't play out. So before you go, Ed, I do have one more topic, and this is more, I guess, I know a little bit, but more poised to you is, you're obviously more in depth with the prospect and the farm systems. We kind of hear of the top guys, top 8 to 10 guys that we see in the system. Who are some guys that most average fans wouldn't know about that you've seen that you really like and could emerge into the scene over the coming years?
Well, I mean, I think the guy that they called up today is going to surprise people. Nick Sogard, I think he's 26. His cousin was Eric Sogard, who had like a 10-year major league career as a utility guy, and their skill set is very similar. Plays every position competently. I think second and third are his best. Does a little bit of everything. He's fast, draws walks. He'll hit a few home runs, hit for a decent average. And he described it well. We had him on. I had him on with Andrew Parker with the other pod that I do to the show we go. We had him on, and he basically said, if you see me every now and then, like if you're at the ballpark like once a month or something, you're probably not going to notice me. But if you see me every game, you are going to notice. And that's the best way I can describe him, because he does everything well. There's nothing sexy about him, but he's very competent. Like the defense that we got out of Jamie Westbrook, much, much better. He'll hit an occasional home run. He's a switch hitter. He just is the kind of player that is very, very useful to have on your bench because you can put him anywhere. And
the fact that he's a switch hitter and he can play everywhere. I mean, I could see down the stretch here where if Hamilton doesn't pick up on things over the next week or so, I think you could see a scenario where Grissom and Sogard kind of 2B, and then Sogard can kind of move around if he needs to fill in other places.
Further down, though, in the farm, there's a guy that if he's not on your radar, he fucking better be, and his name is Franklin Arias. He was taken. He didn't get as much attention last year because of Yolan Cespedes, who also very good prospect. But where Arias is more of just a pure hitter, Arias is probably going to stick at shortstop. And he had I believe since 2003 when Sox Prospects started, he had the single best week out of anybody in the system. Granted, this was at single A and FCL.
Yeah.
But he's like a 10th grader playing with a bunch of T-ballers there. Like that's what it was by the time they called him up. He's 18 years old, playing at single A now, completely adjusted fine. He hit 2 home runs in like his first 3 games there. He's hitting fine. And again, only 18 years old. He's a guy who could shoot up through the system. And I think that we'll be seeing on top 100 lists as soon as next year at the latest, maybe even by the end of this year. So that's a guy way down in the system. As far as pitchers go, I mean, there's the guy they traded Schreiber for, David Sandlin, who I think profiles a little bit better as a reliever, but absolutely filthy stuff, maybe the best stuff in the system. High A, I mean, there's still Miguel Bleis there who's kind of figuring it out, he's had a bit of a rough season as he's adjusting, but he's also only 20, so it's kind of tough to say. And then my favorite player in the entire system, Chase Meidroth, who I truly believe, and I will say this on here, he is a future batting champion. I really believe this. He's constantly underestimated by everybody, but you look at what he's done. He has shot through the system. The guy was taken in the 4th round of the same draft Mikey Romero was taken in, and Roman Anthony. So he's 22. You don't have to hide him from the Rule 5 draft yet. That's how quick his ascent was. He's walked just about, I haven't checked in like a week, but the last time I did check, he had walked, I believe it was 68 walks to like 30 strikeouts. He has the same level of strikeout knowledge as somebody like Tristan Casas. Nowhere near the same power. He has like 5 homers this year, but he makes contact. So that's the kind of guy that I see as being somebody that can hit a really high batting average for you. And, you know, the case against him is, well, if guys don't think he can do damage to you, they're just gonna throw it down the middle. But power is something that you can get better at as you get older. Again, he's only 22. The conditioning, the nutrition, all of that stuff hasn't really been there for that long with him. You can figure that out. And even if you can't, I don't know. I'm pretty cool with guys like Luis Arraez who just hit. They just get hits, and that's all they do. You can play him at third. His best position is second because the arm strength isn't great, but he's played some shortstop. He's played some third base. He was he had a lot of guys. He wasn't playing as much second just because there are so many second basemen in the system right now, but that's probably his strongest position. I know that I'm a lot higher on my draft than most people, but I think that there was a part of me, as much as I like him, that was hoping he'd get traded to a team like the A's or the Marlins just so he could just get in the lineup and play every day, because I think that that's what he's going to need at this point. Kid's only 22. So, yeah, chasing my draft, I'm super high on.
Yeah,
18% walk rate, 10% K rate this year.
Right? Like, that's great. Like, who does that? Who does that?
Very, very good.
And other than his stop at AA last year, he's never struck out more than he's walked in his almost 2-year big league career. Yeah. Well, minor league career, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I feel has always been underrated since he came in. Not that he's been in the farm system for terribly long, but yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I watch some Woo Sox games, but like not a ton. I follow the farm system pretty well, and the dude like just hits.
That's all he does. Like, he doesn't look sexy while doing it. I call him Booger because he looks like he'd be the hero in like an 80s teen sex romp.
Yeah, he is. He's a interesting looking dude. But like again, like that.
Or he looks like he could be a Red Sox podcaster, honestly. Yeah. He was like brunette instead of blonde.
Yeah. But no, he just hits. And so like you said, like even if he doesn't, he's a guy that, you know, only hits 5 to 10 home runs. Like if he came up here and the dude's batting .315 and can hit some doubles and, you know, and be consistent in the field and just be an overall quality hitter, it maybe he's not a, and I like you obviously think his ceiling could be very high, but maybe even if he's not a, you know, a 1 or 2 hitter in the lineup, if he's a guy that's batting 7th and hitting 300, like that's a good baseball player.
We're just wearing out pitchers. Like guys like you put him and Abreu and Casas all next to each other. That's a nightmare if you're a pitcher. These are guys that you have to be. They're not gonna make mistakes. They know the strike zone, and if the challenge system's coming in there, like that's gonna be. Yeah, I have some pretty sexy dreams thinking about that.
And if he's gonna hit that high, so his on base this year is 441, and he's hitting 299.
Yeah.
And the year before that, with 2 stops at high A and double A, 271 average, 408 on base. So if you're getting a 3 to 315 batting average, he's getting on base close to 50% of the time if he's going to hit over 300.
Yeah, and even if its numbers aren't that high, if he's in the majors getting on base 40% of the time, 42%, 43%, that's a good baseball player. Like that's
if it was 2002, he'd be the second baseman for the Oakland A's right now.
It's the best way to put it.
75 walks in 88 games, 75 walks this year. That's astronomically high.
It's stupid. It's just it's silly.
I wanted him to kind of get the call up today when we heard about Westbrook, but he's not on the 40-man, so I kind of get them not forcing this issue. But I want him up here just to. I think he's
see
ready.
What he can do, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's ready, and I feel like he's kind of, and I guess Sogard is technically Bloom traded for him, but Meadroth would be the first guy that drafted from that era that really starts the train of what could happen for the next 1 to 6 years in the farm system. So I'll be a little vocal when he gets his first call up that the train's starting. But all right, yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of it for the Red Sox. Ed, I'll give you the platform to plug whatever you want and let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at edhand89. I'm on Pod by the River, which with my boys Hogdale and Ryan Brady. We've added Stephen O. Scott and Justin MLB recently to our program as well. What else am I on? I do a show that's more like newsy, like interviews with Andrew Parker of Beyond the Monster called To the Show We Go. We had Roman Anthony, Blaze Jordan, guys like that on it last year. If you're interested in prospects, it's a good place to check out. I do the social media for Sox prospects, which, if you're not following that, and again, you're interested in minor league ball, it's a really good place to get started. Oh gosh. And I do, I have a medium that I write on. Oh, hey, it's sweet. You do have the Hogdale shirt. That is a beautiful shirt that is Terry. It looks like a disembodied head with the background, the way that it's coming on.
There it is.
That was frightening.
Drip,
Drip, Hog, repeat. Yep. That is a beautiful shirt. Wow. I wanna order one right now. And I can do that by going to the Pod by the River Twitter page and looking it up there. That's how you can do that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on, Ed. I appreciate it. Hopefully the Sox can pull this. What is it, top of the 9th right now?
Yep, top of the 9th inning, 1 out.
Yeah, 1 on. So we'll have to have you on again, but for now, thanks for coming on. And
always happy to talk ball, guys. It was great. Good meeting you, Betty, and Zach also.
You too, Ed. Take it easy.
Yep, so long.
All right. That was Ed Hand. Good to get some Red Sox talking, and like you said, he has a good insight on the farm system and kind of more in depth beyond the major leagues for the Red Sox. But I do want to finish this up. We've probably got about maybe 15 minutes or so with some Patriots talk. Not a ton has changed since I guess last time we were on, which was last Thursday, I think. Last Thursday. But I do want to specifically kind of talk about this whole Judon situation that's going on. Ben, I'll start with you. What are your overall thoughts on like how it's going? Obviously, he kind of said that he was not going to hold out, and now he's seemingly holding out. And then obviously we saw Mayo's little interaction with him on the field that resulted in him kind of walking off. How are you feeling about this whole situation, and what do you think is going to play out?
So, I mean, the optics certainly don't look super great. I know we all have our own personal opinions about other sports talk on the radio, but I thought they kind of hit the nail on the head the other day. I forget who I was listening to, but they had talked about how this was Monday was first day in pads, and he came out, didn't put his helmet on, he was sat down like a bucket or whatever. Apparently they were harping on the fact he wasn't sitting on the bench. And then I guess Mayo came over, was talking to him. It was animated was the word that was thrown around a lot. And then eventually he left the field. 20 minutes later, came back, and then he walked across the field and started talking to Elliot Wolf about whatever. And I guess it was another animated conversation. I mean, we can only speculate, but obviously it's around his contract the contract he wants that he's either not getting discussions for, or they're not close to what his requests are. So I think the optics were a little tough. This wouldn't have ever happened say what you want about Bill. Something like this never would have happened under Bill. Like if Bill had said, hey, like if he gives you the business and he's like, hey, like you can chill out, like whatever, we're not trading you, we'll get to your contract when we get to it. Like that was the end of it. There would never be a situation where a player would go to the locker room, walk back onto the field and talk to, Bill was the GM, so kind of a unique set of circumstances. The optics don't look great. They are apparently really far apart in contract negotiations. So, I mean, we're in uncharted waters, right? So tough to tell if Wolf is going to follow the same pattern as Bill and just decide that, no, like we control your contract. We're going to dictate, if you go somewhere where it's going to be. And if we're not trading you, then we need you to suit up and we'll figure out your contract in a timely manner. So, Sports Talk Radio talked about how it kind of felt like, when a young kid is pushing their parent for the first time to figure out where the line in the sand gets drawn. And I felt that was kind of fitting of a description. So, I like Judon. He brings a swag to the defense that I don't think really anybody else brings. Maybe Gonzalez has it in him, but he's not there yet. He didn't play a ton last year, obviously getting hurt, but he kind of brings an edge to that defense and everybody feeds off of him. Obviously he's a special talent. The thing with me is that he's 32 and he's in his time with New England in some combination. He's been hurt. And I felt like at times he kind of fades. He's faded in the second half a couple times since he's been here. So I want him here, but I'm not overpaying for the guy. His cap hits like 14 and change. His cash is like 6.5. His last contract was an average annual value of like just over 13.5 a year. So if he wants something similar to that, fine, but I'm not overpaying for him at this point, just given his age and his injury history. I really kind of think he's going to get traded only just because we don't know how Wolf would handle a situation like this. If Bill was here, we'd be like, no, he's not going to get traded. He'll mope around for a while, talk about his contract, figure it out. Bill talks himself, like whatever. We went through that song and dance for 23 years. But with Wolf kind of behind the helm, I feel like we don't really know. I lean more towards I think he's ultimately going to get dealt, especially if he's trying to ruffle feathers between Mayo and talking to Wolf about hey, why aren't I getting paid? Godchaux's agent shows up, he gets paid 24 hours later. He's kind of the last guy from last year's whether it was free agents or guys that are looking for new deals. He's the last one to get one. Hopefully we get a resolution soon, but I kind of would expect him to get moved. Especially if he continues to no show at practice and I get it. He wants a new deal, but the longer this drags out, I think the more and more likely it becomes that he ultimately doesn't have any more time with the organization that we've seen him play his last snap in a New England Patriots uniform.
Fair. Zach, how about you?
Yeah. I mean, to Ben's point, we haven't seen something like this before, right? But if it was Bill, it wouldn't happen. He wouldn't come out. He wouldn't be as vocal as he is. So it's a new way of going about a holdout in terms of like how open it is. So I do agree. I think he's probably going to get traded. I mean, there was that report that came out today that he was offered a contract by Elliot Wolf. He on Twitter himself came out and said, no, it's not true. I didn't actually get one. But if I say that, it looks bad on me. So I'll be quiet. Whatever he said. Another, the point that wouldn't happen under Bill. So I think we're seeing what's going on, who's running the ship. It feels a little like he's trying to run the ship right now, and Mayo and Wolf are trying to get it back from him. So I agree. I think he's going to get traded up ultimately. I do think we are a better team with him in here. I do think that this defense is a better defense. I think we have a better pass rush with him in, obviously. 15.5 sacks, I think it was, when he was healthy in 2021. So, but then last year he was hurt. So it's a hard balance. Now you talk about what you could get from someone like him. I know like there's a guy like Ayuk out there who's very like the hot number now, right? Could you package something up with Judon to get Ayuk? I don't know. But I do agree. I think if it was Bill, it'd be a 7th round pick. You're out of here just to get you off my team, and I don't want to deal with you anymore. I would like to see a bit more value for him than just that. I think there will be some more value, but I agree. I think he's getting traded. Just a matter of when.
Yeah, it's tough to really figure out exactly what's going on, and like you said, we're not used to seeing this. I do kind of like what I saw from Mayo, which we don't know exactly what happened, but seemingly they kind of said like he kind of went up and said, if you're not going to practice, like go back to the locker room,
Get out.
type of thing. And so Mayo seems to be holding firm a little bit there. He was seemingly like I saw that he was playing like Madden or something on his story the other day instead of being at the stadium. So he might not even be coming to the stadium right now. I've proposed the same concept for the last week or two. give him two options, and it's I'll give you $5 million in incentives, sack incentives, or between playing time incentives and sack incentives that say you get 10 sacks, we'll give you $500K. You get 12 sacks, we'll give you another $500K, whatever it may be. Or you can sign a 1-year, $20 million extension, and we'll push up $6.5, $7 million to this year, and you'll get paid around $13 million for the next 2 years. We'll give you solid guarantees where both the years are guaranteed, but you're not getting 16, 17, 18 million, which is probably what he's pushing for. We'll give you the 13 range, and you can either be happy with that or we can move on. And if he doesn't want it, then move on. In terms of a trade, it's really tough to gauge what that could be. I think just for him, you're probably looking at a max of a third. I feel like that might even be pushing it, maybe from a contender where it's going to be later. But if he doesn't, you don't want to pay him, which that's seemingly what it's looking like. He's not part of the long-term future. Like, he's just not. And like you said, he's 32 years old. So yeah, if he doesn't want one of these two options and he's not happy with it, then send him off, send him on his way. I know Pretty Ricky on Twitter, who is just a complete unknown, but it absolutely has some type of source, said today that there's a big trade coming in the NFL. That obviously could be any team. No idea if it's the Patriots, but who knows? Maybe it's the Patriots trading away Judon. Maybe it's the Patriots trading Judon for a different player. I could see a scenario where they go to San Francisco and say, "Hey, you declined a second at the deadline during the draft. We'll give you a second and Judon right now."
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly.
Yeah.
But we'll give you our second and Judon. Maybe they say yes at that point. Again, it could not be Patriots related at all, and odds are it's probably not. But yeah, I would put him on the market, and if someone gave me a late third or an early fourth, I would ship him on his way, and let the new team kind of sign him to the deal that he supposedly is looking for. I said to Ben this morning that he's probably asking for like at least 3 years and at least like 16 million a year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like he's definitely
that's just asinine to me at this point in his career.
He's definitely looking for, and when I say 3 years, I mean scrap this year.
Yeah.
Right. So get him to his age 34 season.
Yeah. And he's just like, I'm not doing that. I'll give him 1 more year on top of this if he wants, and I'll give it at about 13 or so, 14 maybe million a year. But that's it. Like, I'm not over pushing when you're not part of the future. Like, you got to be smart about the money. I know they got all the cap space in the world right now, but you can roll over a good chunk of that.
Yeah.
So just wasting it on, like, just spending it. You don't just spend it to spend it if you can roll it over. It's
That's
not
the
like
point he brought up too. I forget who he was talking about or talking to, but it was on a podcast, and he said that part about the most cap space in the league. He's like, you have the most cap space in the league, like use it. Like, I want a new contract, whatever. And I get where he's coming from. He's trying to cash out. He's trying to get his last big contract and make the most of
the money doesn't evaporate at the end of the year.
Exactly.
It rolls over.
And I think for the Pats, it's obviously more beneficial to not overspend because we've seen what happens with that. And also, he's a aging veteran with an injury history. So another option too is like a team like I was listening to 98.5 this morning or this afternoon, and a team like Detroit, who's not quite there yet, but they don't really have a pass rush outside of Adrian Richardson or Hutchinson. Sorry. Go out and ask what they would like if they're interested in someone like him, and just like offer kind of a similar like you did too. So there's definitely options out there. I get why Judon wants the contract that he wants just to cash out and right off into the sunset before he's 35, 34, whatever it is, and retires. Now, as you said, Matt, he's not part of the future. I'm not doing that. I'm not paying him $15 a year at 3 years. So what can we get for him now, or is it a 2-year deal and he's out next year?
Yeah, he'll definitely have a market. If he goes on the market, like if you're a veteran team and you're a little, on the weaker side of on your pass rush, absolutely, I'd send a 4th-round pick or something like that and give him a 2-year. Like again, if you're a team that's in the mix, going for it. If you're, maybe a Detroit or KC or Cincinnati, Buffalo, whatever, whoever it may be, if you're in the mix, yeah, I would give a 4th, and I would give him 2 years, $30 million, 2 years, $32 million. If I really feel like he's a guy that can help take their defense to the next level in a team that is really on the brink of winning a Super Bowl. But for the Patriots, they're just not in a position. Oof, Raphael almost ended it, but no cigar there. But yeah, I mean, the Patriots are just simply not in a position to logically give him a deal. And so he's seeing everybody else get their deal from the Pats, and he's frustrated. But again, like we've talked about, the difference is like all these guys are in their 20s getting these deals. They're not 32.
No,
so
Judon is a guy you trade to a team who's a piece away, and that piece is a pass rush or veteran presence, whatever. We're not there yet. So it's either 2 years and you build with us.
By the time the Pats are a playoff contender, which, if things play out great, they could be a playoff contender next year, theoretically. But like it's probably 2 years, and at that point he's like 34 and on his last leg probably, and who knows where it'll be. So that's kind of the hard line I'm drawing is, here's your 2 options. If not, that's fine. We'll move on from you, and we'll find a deal and send you on your way, and someone else can kind of give you the money. So I do want to finish up, and I'm kind of putting you guys both on the spot here because I forgot to mention it earlier, but I do want to bring back State Your Take. I forgot to do it again last week, but we're going to do it this week. So anything you want, anything related, I'll give Zach a few seconds to think about it and put Ben on the spot here. Give me a take.
Give me a take. The Patriots will only carry 2 quarterbacks, meaning Joe Milton and Bailey Zappi will not make the roster. There's been this scuttlebutt on the internet from Ben Volen, who is the Dan Shaughnessy of the New England Patriots. He is the quintessential anti-Boston. He wrote this piece basically saying that that Milton has clearly, I don't know what adjective he used, but basically outplayed May through 6 practices, including the pads. Wouldn't be surprised. He's been the wow quarterback, more athletic, bigger arm, blah, blah, blah. I think it's all a fluff piece for clicks on the internet because he's the only Boston sports person with any kind of credibility that's saying this stuff. I kind of hold Greg Bedard in one of like the highest esteems when it comes to credibility regarding Boston sports reporting. He's constantly down at practice. He founded New England, Boston Sports Journal. He's as connected to the team as anybody. And he was on Tuesday. He's on Tuesdays with Felger and Maz. And in the early part of their segment, he basically said that anybody who says Joe Milton is better than Drake May is either blind or lying to you. That nothing Joe Milton has done other than be able to throw the ball 80 yards at 100 miles an hour. Nothing else he does is any good. They're like, we don't even know if he can check the ball down because he throws a fastball. He doesn't know how to take it off, take anything off of it.
Also kind of refuted that today, and it was like, I don't know what you could possibly see to say to make that type of comment.
Yeah. And we can kind of say, I'll segue and throw this in. I think it's a little tough to throw shade on Drake May at this point in training camp, or anybody for that matter. You hear these, and based on my work schedule, I get a ton of Felger and Maz because I'm off work at 2:00. And obviously the morning show is half not sports anyway. But I think to really kind of throw Drake May under the bus and say that he's not wowing anybody and this is concerning on the 3rd day of full pad training camp is a little early. I get that they start a week from tomorrow, and we'll see what it looks like against second string defenses when they play Carolina on the 8th. But to really, start to talk about like, well, it's a concern. He's, I understand we're trying to bring him along, develop the guy, but we're not seeing like, oh, like the arm strength, the arm talent, the escapability, the athleticism shows why he was the number 3 overall pick. Why aren't we seeing that? And it's like, well, and Bedard talked about this. A couple other guys, Mark, Matt, we talked about this the other day. I can't think of his last name. Starts with a D, I think. Mark something.
Darrow.
Thank you. Yeah, Darrow had said like, well, Drake May's not getting any opportunity with the first team offense in competitive drills, right? Like 7-on-7s, he's throwing the ball to Jalen Reagor, and yeah, there's a couple balls I think to Javon Baker, but he's not getting opportunities to throw to the first team offense, and he's not playing behind the first team offensive line. So yeah, it doesn't look great, but what do you expect? He's playing behind guys that probably aren't going to have a job in 6 weeks. So kind of hard to really, throw shade at this point, but big picture, I would expect that Zappe probably runs your practice squad, and you'll see only 2 active quarterbacks come the end of preseason.
Okay. All right. Zach, how about you?
Mine is not sports related, but it's a conversation that we had at work today, so I'm bringing it back here. It's the typical, everyone's had it, ranch versus blue cheese. I am team ranch over blue cheese 100% of the time. Blue cheese is only good Ben is not a fan of that. Blue cheese is only good for buffalo wings or buffalo anything.
Two thumbs up. Two thumbs
ranch
up for
is
that.
by far the more versatile dressing. It is by far the better one, the more superior one. A homemade ranch is better than a homemade blue cheese, and I will stand on that until the day I die. That is a hill that I'm willing to die on.
Yeah, I like it. I'm a ranch guy. I like both, but ranch is, I think, superior, and like you said, it's far more versatile. My favorite, I don't know why, Chili's ranch.
Chili's ranch is
so good, man.
It is.
I remember getting the cheese fries growing up with the ranch on it. Oh God!
There's the sampler plate or the appetizer with the 3. You can pick 3 things. It's like I go with the sliders, the buffalo tenders, and there's something else I get, and the ranch in the middle of it. You dip all 3 of them in. It goes with everything. It makes everything better. Pizza, burgers, whatever. It just is. It's the better one.
So for me, I only say blue cheese over ranch because I'm putting it on wings, as opposed to. Although there is one thing I did this last night. I mixed garlic buffalo wing sauce with ranch. That was actually fantastic on dry rub wings. But yeah, ranch is certainly more versatile. I'm a little out there. I do. I feel like I kind of stand a little bit alone on this. I'm a big mayonnaise on fries guy.
I've heard of that. My wife does that too.
Yeah. Matt's over there.
Mayonnaise sucks, dude. The only thing I use mayonnaise on is tuna fish sandwiches.
So here's what you got to do. I need you to figure out a way to get your hands on some Dutch mayonnaise. It'll change your life. It is far and away better than anything you can get in the States, and you can buy it on Amazon. You can put more money in Jeff Bezos' pocket, not that he needs any more. It's called Zanze, Zanze. Got it when I was in Aruba a couple years ago. It's way better than anything you can get here in the States. And I would say don't knock it till you try it. But yeah.
All right. For me, I'll go Patriots related, and it's that Jalen Polk will be 1,000-yard receiver this season.
Oh boy.
I agree with that. I'm a big Jalen Polk guy.
I really pre-draft, I wasn't super high on him. Ben was actually higher on him than I am. We'll wait and see, but it looks like I think I underestimated him. He looks like he's going to be good, reliable, and consistent for this team. I think he could be a guy that contributes right away. And so when we see Bourne, at this point, I wouldn't expect him to be ready at the start of the season. It's going to be what? It's going to be Polk, Douglas, Bourne. Polk, Douglas, and Baker.
Sure.
Like as your top 3 guys, probably. Juju's probably out, I think. Osborne, we'll see. Jalen Reagor, we don't know. He's not really an offensive guy. He seems like a special teams guy now. He's going to have all the opportunity in the world, and so even if whether it's Brissett or Drake May, I think he's going to have a lot of opportunity. And, in 17 games, 1,000 yards isn't crazy anymore. So I'll go with that Jalen Polk reaches 1,000 yards in his rookie season. And who knows, maybe he pushes for top 5 in like offensive rookie of the year or something.
So that's 59, just under 59 yards a game.
Yeah,
what he would
nothing
have
crazy,
to
nothing
average
crazy
over a
over the top.
17-game season.
Yeah. But all right, that's going to finish us up for this week. We do have Lucy Burge, I think that's how you say her name, coming on next Thursday. She does a lot of work for Odyssey Sports, and she's well known on Twitter, very educated. She does a lot of betting, stuff like that. So we're excited to have her on. I'll obviously be advertising that throughout the week, but until next week, thanks for listening, and go Red Sox. They're starting extra innings right now, so take care and goodbye.
Night, guys.
See you guys.